All right, I am Laura Ingraham. This is the Ingraham Angle from Washington tonight, and we begin the hour with a scandal of monumental significance. Finally, with Republicans in charge of the House, the rocks are being lifted on the COVID cover-up. And the rot that we see underneath is what we warned you about long ago. Rank corruption at the heart of our federal response. Now, the former CDC director under Trump, Dr. Robert Redfield, was questioned about Anthony Fauci's mad scramble to conceal the role he and others played with greenlighting the funding to the Wuhan lab in China. So what did Redfield think of the paper that Fauci pressured scientists to write back in February 2020 that would conclude ultimately that COVID most likely did not escape from a lab?
This whole approach that was taken, it's antithetical to science.
Thank you.
Science has debate, and they squashed any debate.
Do you think that the paper does hide the truth?
I think it's an inaccurate paper that basically was part of a narrative that they were creating. Remember, this pandemic did not start in January at the seafood market. We now know there was infections all the way back into September. This was a narrative that was decided that they were going to say this came from the wet market, and they were going to do everything they could to support it, to negate any discussion about the possibility that this came from a lab.
But wait a second. Anthony Fauci insisted under oath that the gain-of-function research, the riskiest research you can do on a virus, wasn't being done at the Wuhan lab with our help.
Dr. Fauci was affirmatively told in an email that NIAID had a monetary relationship with the Wuhan Institute through EcoHealth Alliance. He was told this in January 27th of 2020. Do you think that Dr. Fauci intentionally lied under oath to Senator Paul when he vehemently denied NIH's funding of gain-of-function research?
I think there's no doubt that NIH was funding gain-of-function research.
Is it likely that American tax dollars funded the gain-of-function research that created this virus?
I think it did, not only from NIH, but from the State Department, USAID, and from DOD.
Okay, do you realize what this all means? Well, not surprisingly, Redfield told the committee that he found himself shut out of key calls early on in the pandemic. And that was when Fauci and company realized that Redfield was not going to toe the party line.
Why do you think you were excluded from those calls?
Because it was told to me that they wanted a single narrative and that I obviously had a different point of view.
All about the science. Well, these sanctimonious camera hounds who flanked Trump day after day in the White House briefing room, these people who were pushing for these damaging lockdowns and smearing good doctors and researchers who knew the truth about inexpensive antiviral treatments, they did more than grandstand on camera, though, these people. Those people destroyed public trust in our public health officials and our entire public health system. So why weren't Fauci, his boss Francis Collins, and their useful idiot Deborah Birx at all interested in discussing what renowned experts were saying about when and how COVID spread? What explains their stunning lack of curiosity?
In September of 2019, three things happened in that lab. One is they deleted the sequences. It was highly irregular. Second thing they did was they changed the command and control of the lab from the civilian control to the military control. Highly unusual. And the third things they did, which I think is really telling, is they let a contractor redo the ventilation system in that laboratory.
There must be accountability here. There must be full transparency on the money we funneled to Wuhan. Yeah, all courtesy of you, the U.S. taxpayers. If our own public health officials had a direct or indirect involvement in the research that led to this global pandemic, Merrick Garland, our Attorney General, the entire DOJ should be ready to impanel a grand jury. There should be indictments. Oh, no, but remember, he thinks the biggest threat facing the American people are guys like that so-called QAnon shaman they threw in jail. He's the big threat. The big money in medical research from pharma and from the federal government, it has corrupted huge swaths of our scientific community, and it must stop.
The scientific community is is very afraid to speak up on political issues. And I think the reason is that government grants are handed out through this system of peer review committees. Right. And so you don't want any single scientist on your peer review committee to vote against you. This means that they cannot be relied upon in the way that I think we would like them to be independent and forthright and call it as they see it.
For revealing how the sausage is made, by the way, that was the former medical editor of the New York Times, for how the whole scientific hierarchy cares more about their grants than the health of the American people. Nicholas Wade, you just saw there, was attacked by committee Democrats.
Inviting someone with discredited and dangerous views like Mr. Wade's to testify on the origins of this pandemic, which has disproportionately harmed communities of color, is not responsible and credible oversight.
For a race of people who have suffered, endured, and survived 3 centuries of slavery, oppression, deprivation, degradation, I'm absolutely offended that you would have the opportunity to take this platform and to add anything of significance to it.
But Mr. Wade left out another motivating factor. Well, these figures are smearing him, of course. This is just a textbook, as we've talked about so much on the Ingraham angle. More than just the relationship with China that Fauci, et cetera, were protecting, as we found out back in February 2020, what was of utmost importance to Fauci? Watch.
I think early on in the outbreak, it was clear that there was some muddling of information. But over the last several weeks, the Chinese authorities have really been very explicit that they were going to not tolerate any misinformation going out.
I'm surprised that you would say that, given what we know about China's pattern of lying about critical issues, Dr. Fauci.
The Chinese scientists I've dealt with myself personally for years, if not decades. I have faith that they are not distorting things.
So China will not let any misinformation go out. He's reassuring the American public on China's behalf in that interview I did with him in February 2020. The money, the power, the fame, the media's complicity with all of this, and the dangerous and lucrative obsession that so many had in the medical community with this gain-of-function research, that was all more important to all of these people, including Fauci, than coming clean about important facts at every stage of a global pandemic.
Hey, Sean Hannity here. Hey, click here to subscribe to Fox News YouTube page and catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You will not get it anywhere else.